She found herself on the brink of running late for work, so she hastened through the bustling crowd. In her rush, she stumbled over an unseen obstacle, and then her eyes fell upon a tiny, fluffy creature before her. Beside it lay an open manhole. She stared at the small white animal, captivated by the intensity of its gaze fixed upon the abyss. As she observed this enigmatic scene, she couldn't help but wonder about the untold tale of this helpless creature and what role destiny had in store for her to play in its unfolding story. Jiang Nan had dedicated her life to relentless study, culminating in her triumphant graduation from Shanghai University. Her hard-earned success led her to a prestigious position at a major bank, eventually rising to become an executive. Yet, amidst her professional achievements, a lingering emptiness persisted in her heart. Unbeknownst to her, the universe was about to intervene in her well-ordered life. Each morning, she would rise before the sun, embarking on a long walk to her workplace, toiling for 10 hours before retracing her steps homeward, collapsing into her bed. Jiang led a rather monotonous existence, diligently working, fulfilling her duties as a responsible citizen and dutiful daughter. She seldom paused to contemplate life's mysteries, but destiny had an unexpected twist in store. Alone in her apartment, Jiang remained oblivious to the extraordinary encounter awaiting her on her usual route to work. One morning, in her customary rush, she failed to notice a small, desperate creature in need of assistance. The world around her seemed equally oblivious to the creature's plight. Until that is, Jiang tripped and her life took an unforeseen turn. Jiang hurriedly paced, determined to regain her lost time, her heels echoing among the bustling crowd. Amidst the chaos, she stumbled but regained her balance, just in time to discover the source of her trip: a manhole. Nearby lay a small, furry creature. Approaching the puppy, she tried to coax it off the street, concerned for its safety. However, the tiny white pup remained stubbornly still. Jiang glanced at her watch, panic setting in. She'd never been late for work in her life and wasn't about to start now. Reluctantly, she left the puppy on the manhole cover and sprinted off to a day of number crunching and presentations. Consumed by paperwork and takeout lunches, when evening descended, the puppy hadn't crossed her mind. Exhausted and mentally overwhelmed, she began her journey home. But as she turned the corner, there was the puppy once more. Peacefully resting on the same manhole cover, Jiang approached the small creature, scanning the area for its owner, only to find no leads among the street vendors and shopkeepers. Frustration and anger welled up. This wasn't her problem, and time was slipping away. But that night, Jiang couldn't get the tiny puppy out of her mind. She saw his pleading eyes and began to wonder what his story was. She tossed and turned, unable to sleep. What heartless person would leave a puppy on the street to fend for itself? Or if he belonged to someone, why wouldn't the puppy move from the manhole cover and go home? But the thought that kept her awake was, why hadn't she helped? Jiang awoke in a flat panic. Her heart raced as she realized that she'd slept through her alarm. She'd only managed to get a few hours of sleep, and now she was going to be late for work if she didn't run. She considered taking her car, but that would be pointless in the morning Shanghai traffic. She threw her business suit on and sprinted out the door. As she ran, another worry popped into her head. Would the puppy still be there? She sprinted past the manhole cover and her heart dropped. The puppy was still there. Hundreds of people continuing to walk past him as he kept his vigil at the manhole cover. Jiang resolved there and then that she would do something about it. But she had no time now. Distracted and worried, she went through the motions at work until it was time to begin the walk home again. Only this time, she took a different route home. She stopped at the all-night supermarket and bought some rice, a whole roast chicken, and some dog kibble. Then she made her way back to the puppy, sitting all alone on the manhole cover. She tried again to move him from the street, tempting him with the scent of roast chicken, but he refused. Jiang left the food next to him, but he didn't seem interested. At least she tried, she thought to herself as she walked back home. That night, her worries about the pup only intensified. She knew she had to do more for him. Clearly, nobody else would. But what could she do? She lived in an apartment and didn't have the time to take care of an animal, but she also didn't want to take him to the pound. There was only one thing she could do. She promised herself that if the puppy was still there in the morning, she'd take him home, and then she'd take it from there. That morning, Jiang held her breath as she rounded the corner, hoping that the pup had been taken in by a good Samaritan. When she saw him still sitting on the manhole cover, she felt a mixture of joy and disappointment, but she knew what she had to do. She scooped him up and took him home. She was his mom now. She called in sick that day to make sure that she could take care of the little pup, but as soon as she turned to put the pup on the floor and closed the door, he took off running. Jiang raced after him through the streets and throngs of people. She couldn't lose him now. Where is he going? It didn't take Jiang long to realize that the tiny puppy was running back to the manhole cover, and that's where she found him. She'd caused quite a commotion in the street, running at full tilt and yelling for the puppy to come back. A passerby saw the puppy sitting in his spot and exclaimed, "You again." Did the woman know him? Zhang turned to the woman and asked her if she knew the puppy. Was it hers? Did he know the owner? But the woman's response left her breathless. She began to tell Zhang the puppy's story and why he wouldn't leave that spot on the manhole cover in the street. And then the puppy's strange behavior made perfect sense. Just 3 years ago, there had been an accident in this very spot. Unfortunately, the puppy's mother had been a victim of a hit and run in the middle of the night. The woman had witnessed it firsthand. The driver had felt the impact but kept on driving. The pup's mother didn't survive and had been taken away to the sanitation department. There was another of the mother's pups that was accounted for. The tiny white pup had been left there alone and had refused to leave the spot where his mother had passed. Zhang knelt down by the puppy and stroked his white fur. She understood he was grieving. Tears ran down her cheeks at the thought of all the poor creature had gone through, but then the pup did something strange. He moved away from the manhole cover and walked over to the drain on the pavement. Zhang followed him. And then she heard a small yelp. She yelled down again to peer inside the drain and saw a little face looking back up at her. This must be the puppy's sibling. Obviously terrified, he'd run into the drain to hide. Had the little pup been waiting for this moment to get help? Zhang lay down and leaned inside as far as she could, stretching her arms out until her hands brushed wet fur. She pulled the tiny pup out of the sewer and inspected him. He appeared hungry and damp, yet miraculously unharmed. Had the little white puppy been guarding his sibling all this time, she couldn't leave them behind, so she brought both puppies home, tending to their needs with baths and nourishment. Before long, they were frolicking around her apartment, reunited and ecstatic. Zhang decided to adopt them both. Every morning before work, she'd stroll them along the same path, stopping by the manhole cover. There, the two pups would sniff and remember, and she'd observe a moment of silence in memory of their mother. As days passed, Zhang noticed a remarkable change in her life. Her adopted puppies brought daily joy, their wagging tails a heartwarming sight. They gave her a reason to eagerly return home each evening, though she couldn't help but regret not helping them sooner.